raised in northern France, this in relation to that shooting spree recently at the Brussels Jewish Museum that killed 3, left 1 person in critical condition. The suspect not talking for now, say investigators, but he could be well charged for those murders. With us to talk about it, Guillaume Denoy de Saint-Marc of the French Association of Victims of Terrorism. Also with us, Marwan Muhammad of the Coalition Against Islamophobia, Nicholas Vinegar of the Reuters news agency, and joining us from London, Olivier Guitta of the Henry Jackson Society. We were talking in part 1 of our discussion about the profile of this suspect. One question that's been asked over and again since Saturday is, could he have been stopped? Could this have been prevented?
There are different things. He could have been stopped at different level. Which is very difficult is to stop him before he goes to Syria. And the other problem is, how do we do when people like him are coming back from Syria? I think in each case they need to be trained in a group, multidisciplinary, and tailor-made, because each one is different. They don't have the same background. They don't have the same reasons why they went to Syria. They didn't see or do the same things when they went into Syria. Some have to go to jail maybe because they did horrible things or murdered persons, or they have to go in a hospital because they have a post-traumatic trauma, or they have to be re-endorsed into the society. But that cannot be done directly. It means you have to understand in which process, what was he expecting when he was going to Syria? Was he disappointed or not? And how can we bring him back to the society? And this should be tailor-made with sociologists, psychologists, with using different tools like testimonies of formers, like imams, like testimonies of victims, or all sorts of tools. And it should be really tailor-made because each case is different. And yeah, that's the only solution. It can be very long, maybe expensive, but it's the only way to bring back these persons into our society. Even if they go in jail, if they're just kept for 3 or 4 years, and if they're not treated, to try to understand why are they radicalized, until what point are they still dangerous. Then you cannot bring them back to society. And if they finish the time in prison, they'll come back as heroes. So it's very important to work in different levels, to work in the schools, in education, before, to understand what is religions, what are the limits of democracy, how can we understand the other without getting into violence, how can we accept someone's different opinion or different religion. All this work has to be done in school. Then it has to be done on the person who come back who are not dangerous, or nothing has been appeared to be dangerous on what they did. Sometimes we don't know exactly what they did, but anyway, nothing can be done on the police aspect to put them in prison. But it also has to be treated for the ones who are going in prison, and we call it de-radicalization in that case, or counter-radicalization in another case. And it means that we have to have a counter-narrative or another narrative that can inspire these persons and to get them to change their mind on the reasons why they were going.
Okay.
Sometimes they were going for good reasons on their point of view.
Yeah, setting up the mechanisms for developing this counter-narrative. That sounds like a long process. I want to ask you, Olivier Guitta, on this. What do you do with people coming back from Syria? Do you use carrot or stick?
Before I answer your question, I just want to go back to a point that one of your panelists made earlier on. I think it's mind-boggling and dangerous to whitewash what happened in Brussels from this jihadist and to compare this to people emigrating to Israel and joining the army, especially in light of what happened. Second, to answer your question on counter-radicalization, the narrative indeed needs to be toughened up. But the way you do it is you get people from inside the community to talk to that person, and I think that's what the British have been doing for a long time. The French are getting to that. But the real problem is finding who are the people coming back from Syria. It's to track them down. Remember,
in this case, the German authorities raised the red flag.
Exactly. So that was pure luck. I mean, out of many coming back, a lot of them are going to go through the cracks, and we're not going to know. And whereas it's the French or the British or the Germans, they don't have the wherewithal and the means to track down and to follow and to monitor those people. Remember, for one person coming back, the security services need about 20 to 30 people to track them down on a 24-hour basis. So that's very, very difficult.
And then there's the issue of radicalization inside of prisons. The French Interior Minister on breakfast radio was asked about the indoctrination of jihadists in prison.
Il faut agir par rapport à cela.
We must take action against this, and it's part of my plan. How should we act? First of all, by ensuring that there are trained imams who know what Islam is, who are part of Islamic culture, and who will explain it in prisons. It's vital that we get a different kind of approach.
Trained imams. What are your thoughts on that, Marwan Mohammed?
I think that French government a long time ago and kept this stance, cut the link with the Muslim civil society. They had a choice of either accommodating Muslim community in France as it is, with all its diversity, or to choose Muslim puppets that are going to say whatever they want them to say and to do whatever they want them to do. By choosing the puppets over the diversity of the Muslim community, they lost the legitimacy.
When you say choosing puppets, just for our viewers who don't understand, are you referring to the councils, the associations that have been
to some extent, but some good work has been done also within the CFCM. The point is, by choosing from the government's position who are the legitimate leaders in the Muslim community, you completely lose what I would call the street credibility, the credibility that the leaders have to their community. And when losing this relationship with the Muslim community, they lost the natural help that they would have had in countering radicalization. See, in countries where Muslim diversity is accommodated, you will find Muslim leaders right at the side with the police officers, with the community leaders, in trying to de-radicalize a number of youth that want to do wrong.
So how do you do that? Because France, as you know, is a very top-down society. It's not like the Catholic Church where there's this very rigid hierarchy. How do you do that?
I think our friend Guillaume made quite a point earlier. You want to invest in de-radicalization. You want to invest in identifying a number of people who do have a problem and that have frustration we want to reduce. Well, it takes an investment. It takes time. It takes detailed work. It takes group action. It takes listening. It takes subtle work with these youth, which raises the question of how we deal with security today in Europe. Are we really working on security in itself, or are we working on the perception of security? Are we giving up individual freedoms for the feeling of security? And if so, what is the limit to this? We see today, and it's the truth in the UK, the truth in France and in Germany, that in the name of counter-terrorism, we have reduced, we have suppressed a number of fundamental freedoms, and now, in contexts like in the UK, we can arrest people without even them knowing the reason for it.
Nicholas Vinegar?
Well, I mean, you know, there is an example very close by of the community-based approach. In the UK, you have very strong community representatives who... Muslim leaders, all sorts of, who do help the police and things like that. Does that solve the problem of people being called to jihad and people following that ideology? Not entirely. It was where you had Britain was where you had the 7/7 attacks, the worst terror attack in Europe for some time. You had the man who was beheaded in the street by two self-radicalized people, and you can call these lone events. Maybe they are lone events, but it certainly hasn't sort of put an end to the problem. So this issue of de-radicalization, of countering ideas with other ideas, I think it's very tricky, and I don't think there's necessarily a silver bullet, but certainly, investment and bring all the experts you can on board, and all the resources in prisons. I would say, anything that you can try is good. But yeah, anyway, that was
anything you can try is good. But the problem, as we seem to be seeing, Olivier Guitta, is that for all this talk of working more closely with religious leaders, what we're finding is that it's no longer the days of Finsbury Park where you had radical imams with inflamed rhetoric. Now the indoctrination's happening over the internet.
Exactly. And that's the point where, the social media is playing a big part. Images are being bombarded, and there's so much that a government can do about that. But that's the crux of the problem at this point, is getting the families to help the security services. And I think the fact that, as I said last time, if you can get and save just one life by some of the measures that the French government has put together last month, then you have done a great job. And as far as I understand, there were more than 120 calls into that hotline in France to just tell the authorities about possible trips to Syria. It has to go through the family network and people that realizes that, we're not going to get to the level that we need and get those people stopped before they're going if the families do not help.
Let me get your reaction to that, Guillaume Dunois de Saint-Marc. This hotline that's been set up where people can call in toll-free to say, hey, I think a member of my family is becoming self-radicalized.
That's a good starting point. But then what do you do? That's the important thing, is what do you do after? And what is very important, it should be done at the level of a town. It cannot be done at the level of a country. You have to be very close to the family. You have to have a tailor-made approach, know exactly what's going on, and each family would be different. Still the same thing. So we have to really have a tiny approach, but multidisciplinary approach on each case. And that's a big difficulty, because it means that you have to have specialists of different skills in each town, or at least where there is a problem, where there is a signal of a family who is asking for help, because it's ask for help. And then you have to provide this support to the family.
Because what happens right now if you call that hotline?
For the moment, it's just about is the case dangerous or not. It's very pragmatic things. Things are done not badly, but I think it's not enough. And we are at a starting point. Just, is the person radicalized or not? That's the first thing. And is it dangerous or not? The signals that have been given by the family, are they dangerous or not? But it's only a first step.
All right, Marwan Mohammed, in France, people are a little bit wary of this kind of hotline.
Okay, we have a testimonial from someone working on this hotline. I asked really basically what are the typical call you would get in a day. The typical call would be, my son converted to Islam and he started praying. I think he's radicalizing. And this, in a nutshell, summarized the whole state of mind in France today. Being a Muslim and practicing one's religion is already seen as a radical step. And on this issue, I'd like to point something that is somehow problematic. When we create the idea of the extreme Muslim and of the moderate Muslim, we consider that Islam in itself is a dangerous substance. You take a bit of it, you're a moderate Muslim. You take just too much of it, you become extreme. So we need to be very, very careful in our approach.
But a lot of the families have been saying about this hotline that the problem is they feel as though they have no one to turn to when they're losing control of one of their children.
And that's so true, because we reach such a level of tension in the French society that we just cannot talk normally about these issues. I give hundreds of conferences a year in universities, in mosques, in community association, and I meet with people, Muslims and non-Muslims. parents of Muslim kids who ask me questions which are completely outside the scope of Islamophobia. And I see this plainly and directly. My son converted to Islam. He doesn't want to speak to my husband anymore because he's non-Muslim. He wants to change his name. He doesn't want to shake hands with my aunt. What do I do? And the answer to this is more and a better religious education. Islam and this religion didn't come as a breaker of families. On the contrary, Islam comes and preserves the nature of family, even including non-Muslim members. So the answer that we need with the big E is education. We need more imams available at the grassroots level. We need more educators. We need more open days at the mosque where non-Muslim can come and ask their question. We need more support from people who convert to Islam so that they can learn progressively, and if they truly believe in this religion, understand what they do believe in.
All right, engage in the real world, in the community.
Yes.
So what do you do about the internet? What do you do about the internet?
That's where we need to be very smart and very analytical. If we look at the networks through which people are recruited for radicalization, we see that they are identifiable. The typical type of arguments that they would see, the typical marginal religious reference that they would use, we are able to identify around 150 websites where we would see this type of speech. There should be an over scrutiny on these networks, and then specific areas detected at the national level where we do see this. We, at the Collective Against Islamophobia, we are in touch with many imams and many mosques across the country. And some of them tell us, okay, in our area, I had 10 youth this week that came and asked questions about this. I gave them an answer, but I'm a bit worried. Maybe I should follow up with these. So through the national network, if we are in connection with the civil society, community leaders, mosques, associations, and so on, we are able to detect problematics, and we are able to address this in a soft power manner, in an efficient manner through education.
Olivier Guitta, do you agree?
It's going to take a long time to get to that level. As I said, monitoring the website is important, but as soon as they know they're a target and that they're being monitored, then the website goes down and they start a new one. I mean, all this could be happening just in utopia, but in real life, it doesn't happen, unfortunately. What needs to happen is, as I said, human intelligence. That's the only way we're going to get some of this solved as far as people going into Syria. If it's not for people helping us to monitor people coming back and forth, what happened in Brussels is just the beginning of a long span of events this year, because the numbers are there. You know, if you have 800 people in France that went to fight the jihad in Syria, 500 in Britain, those people, even if you have just 10% coming back and thinking about acting, if you don't have the intel, you could have the best security services in the world, the best technology, but you won't be able to stop them.
It won't have the intel. Let me ask you, sitting in the seat where you are now, Nicholas, last Thursday, we were discussing the Edward Snowden affair and how he was talking about the erosion of civil liberties after his interview on U.S. television last week. When you hear Olivier Guitta's recipe for how to contain these people returning from Syria, what are your thoughts?
Well, actually, I'm not sort of shocked by what he said, because I think what he's talking about is not the sort of mass churning of internet data that spies on people indiscriminately and ends up bringing in a lot of private information that we don't want the government to have. Essentially, that would be kind of a filter approach where we could say, well, let's put a few phrases through a filter, and all the websites where these phrases appear, let's shut them down. The problem is that that's radicalization 1.0, and where we are now is radicalization 2.0, where most people aren't, they're reference websites, places you can go, but you're radicalized because a friend of yours from high school is in Syria, and he's posting pictures and says, you know what, you should come out. And those people know how to use Photoshop. They know how to use all the most sophisticated and cutting-edge tools of communication to, you know, to sell jihad. And how are you going to follow? How are you going to filter all that? You need people who are in the rooms. You need people who are in the network and paying attention to it. And that is an enormous task, and you know, something that's quite new.
From what you're hearing,
message.
Let me ask you, Guillaume de Samarc, from what you're hearing, do the French authorities get that? Do they get this?
I think that France is a bit late for different reasons. France was thinking that they had intelligence was so good because they prevented from many terrorist attacks. So they thought it was a good issue. They didn't have to work on what was going on in the country. We have the biggest Muslim community in Europe. We have the biggest Jewish community in Europe. And also, normally we don't have officially any community. And for all these reasons, France was a bit late about getting in the process of the northern of Europe countries.
Officially in community, because it's illegal in France to have racial profiling and profiling by religion.
And the Ministry of Interior Affairs is also the Ministry of Religions, which all these things makes everything very, very complicated, and it's also very centralized. And I think that the approach cannot be centralized. It should be on the ground. It should be on the field, in the towns, in the suburbs. And the approach is very top-down. And France is not used to work with the NGOs. You know, the state is the state, and the NGO and the NGOs.
Is that changing at all?
I think it's changing, but I would say that Mr. Valls wanted to change because we had a lot of discussions with him.
The Prime Minister.
The Prime Minister. He was Minister of Interior Affairs at that time. He was part of our working group, and we were trying to work at the French level. But it's not the habit in France to make people work together, coming from the state and from NGOs or researchers, and put them around the same table. And this has to change, because this only solution, it cannot come from the state. We as NGOs have to be on the field with the person, discuss with them. Maybe not me as a victim of terrorism, but I can provide testimonies to the people working with the youngs to try and understand why they did that, what were the purpose, and try to teach them the importance of law. And coming from a victim, the victims of terrorism is a very good messenger. We have been threatened by the most violent political action, and our message is a message of peace. We are not looking. It's a message. We still look in the future. It can be used in a very positive way to discuss from man to man. You know, it's a personal approach. It's a personal talking between two persons, and we have to come back to this level. And we are trying to mix testimonies of victims from all different origins around the world, different religions, different type of terrorism, just to say no to the political violence.
And you go to working class suburbs?
And we go in the working class suburbs or in towns. We've been doing it in the 17e, as in Sevran-Bodot or Nantes or Vannes, everywhere. It can be extremism from the right wing, from the left wing, from the green. We have green extremism coming out also. So it's all type of extremism, not only Muslims.
Mawan Mohammed, what do you think the takeaway has been since the Toulouse shootings of 2012?
We didn't learn a lot. We haven't invested massively in the suburbs. We didn't invest massively in the education and the provision of means for education, not only at a religious level, but by and large at inclusion of minorities into the society. So we haven't learned.
So then, do you agree with Olivier Guitta that there is a ticking time bomb with all these people returning from Syria?
Absolutely not. I think Mr. Guitta lives on this threat of Islamic radicalism. He's been producing this sort of research for years. Now it's the threat of people coming back from Syria. Before that, it was people coming back from Iraq and then from Africa and so on. So I think, like Mr. Guitta, some people have made a business of making this threat exist at the European level. But I think that mass surveillance is not a solution for Europe today. I think Europe is stronger than that. I think that the fabric of people is that we should be working on this, on what binds people to one another in Europe, and that with a more inclusive Europe, with a more open and vibrant Europe, then we will have the fabric that people live together and people strive together for the accomplishment of peace.
Final point on this from you, Nicholas. When you look at what's happened since 2012, do you feel as though the French are getting more of a grip on it now?
There's been a few concrete steps. There's been the creation of this hotline and alert network, and I don't think anyone could argue that it's a bad idea to have a system, an alert system, where you may get many false alarms, you may get people who misinterpret a conversion to religion, but perhaps it's not a bad idea to know who is watching certain videos on the internet. What I was talking about earlier in terms of radicalization 2.0, I mean, I think that is something. I haven't heard anything in the plan and that was publicized about tracking Twitter accounts and Facebook accounts and all these kind of person-to-person networks where jihadist ideas are really getting advertised because it's somebody you know, and therefore word of mouth is the best advertisement. I don't know what's going on in the Interior Minister. Is there a cell that's devoted to following these accounts? I mean, there is such thing. There are cyber warriors out there. You know, the Bashar al-Assad's regime has its cyber warriors, and the radical Islamist groups in Syria have their cyber warriors. And in a way, we should be in that game too. And I'm not sure. I don't know what's going on in France. Maybe because we're being secretive, we're not talking about it. But it seems, well, maybe that's one area. I'm not for mass surveillance. That's not my argument. But I do think it's silly to be absent. It's silly to say that's something we can't participate in.
We're going to have to leave it there, unfortunately. But I want to thank you very much, Nicholas.
Can I please answer?
Unfortunately, we're out of time. I want to thank Nicholas Vineker. I want to thank Marwan Mohammed, Guillaume Denois de Saint-Marc, Olivier Guitta. Sorry, the clock ran out on us. Thank you for joining us from London here in the France 24 debate.